Hello everyone, welcome to, this is gonna be my first YouTube video ever pretty much, so yeah, let's just get into it. I'm gonna be talking about EU's chances at Worlds and some of the things I think maybe we should look to change or look to do better, and some of the things we still have to work on. So I'm gonna be going through quite a few different things here. First of all, the different skills in competitive league and some of the requirements for that, the strength of the LPL and the LCK. This idea of getting second doesn't make you closer to being first or being the best, and then how to use LCK LPL Vods, how can we use it to our advantage and get better. 2019 G2 and 2023 G2 is just interesting similarity there is, we can talk a little bit about, and then comparison between LEC season finals and the LPL finals, some of the gameplay related stuff that you can look to compare, and then lastly a short conclusion. So first of all, this idea of competitive league in 3 levels. One, you have the micro. This is the base level. This is what everything depends upon. It's very simple, everyone knows this. Reaction time, attack move, auto spacing, micro intensive mouse movement, all of this. And then there's a level in between the macro and the micro level that I at least consider is this individual macro decisions, which is to me positioning, base timings, ability usage, summoner usage, wave management, and trade timings. So this is your individual decisions. It has nothing to do with your team at all. But it's not your micro. It's not your how fast can you click, how quick do you react, how good are you at it's your own decisions you make within the game that aren't related to your ability to click fast. And these things can be very important, and often in competitive league has a way bigger influence than getting 1 or 2 more auto attacks off in lane, or like, oh, I got like 2 more last hits. Obviously it has an impact, but if you fuck up your wave management, or if you fuck up your base timing, or if you fuck up your summoner spell usage, or if you fuck up something like this, usually you get punished way harder. And then you have like the T-wide macro, stuff like team fighting and map movements in terms of maybe Herald or Drake, or side laning, team compositions, front to back. Are you playing kite comps? Are you playing scaling, more scaling related, whatever it might be. Obviously these are broad umbrella terms, not specific, so to say. Then I want to give a quick example of this way of seeing the game. I just drafted 2 team compositions here: GP Poppy, Azir Zyra Khan, and you have Renekton, Nocturne, Nico, Aphelios, Rel. What I want to, demonstrate with this is I want to look from the perspective of the Poppy, right? So you have Zyra, GP, Azir, very heavy, kite back, letting the enemy team run into you. They run into barrels, they run into soldiers, they run into feathers. They're gonna die. But if you run forward, it's gonna be way harder. And then on the other side, if you look, you have Rel, Nico, Nocturne, Renekton. They have very little value if they aren't on top of their targets. So you want to probably combo Nocturne ult with a Nico ult with a Renekton flank, with a Rel flank, and then look to blow people up immediately before they get peeled. So if you look at Poppy, this is like, that was the team wide we just talked about right there, right? You have a kite back comp, you wanna look to disengage. Okay, what do you do with that? Well, Poppy is by far the best match into Rel. Her W completely counters her engage. So you're gonna look to do that, right? That's an individual macro decision. As Poppy, you should know, okay, I'm looking to match this champion. I'm looking to W whenever she ults in. And then the micro comes in with like, okay, whenever Nocturne ults and whenever there's chaos, like, did you track Rel good enough? Did you know her position before the Nocturne ult in order to actually reliably react to her flash W ult with your W? Because if you can't, then you just get destroyed. So this is how you kind of see it in 3 levels, okay? You know you have a disengaged team comp, you know you need to match the Rel, and then can you actually do it? Now if we go to the next example here, you have K'Sante, Wukong, Casio, Sari, Renata versus Gwen, Vi, Ahri, Kai'Sa, Leona. And this is Kai'Sa pre-static, it's pre-AP Kai'Sa. At least back then it wasn't viable, or there was no static. This is a very, red side in this case, a very heavy engage comp. You have Kai'Sa has to go in, Leona has to go in, Ahri has to go in, Vi has to go in. Gwen is more similar style to GP and side. If they run into you, you destroy them, but obviously you can run forward. And then you have on the other side Renata, Casio, Sari to some extent, very similar to the comp we just talked about with the Poppy and the maybe they wanted people to run into you, and then Wukong as well, he is flexible to some extent. He can engage, but he is also fine with enemies running into him, and K'Sante too, right? So if you compare these two comps, red side is running in, blue side is kiting away. Now if we look at the example, you see in this case Mad Lions maybe get a bit too overeager. They get Leona Flash and then they keep rowing in, they keep running in, and because they keep running in, it ends up being not quite ideal, partly because they're not playing towards their comp strength. So with this in mind, now we understand this triangle or this pyramid a little bit better. What is the strength of LPL and LCK? Where do they have their biggest advantage? Where do they usually edge out the West? That is individual macro decisions. And I'm going to show a lot of examples later on, but for sure this is where their biggest strengths are relative to the West. Their laning phase, their positioning in teamfights, base timings, summoner usage, wave management, all these things. Obviously, it's not like they're out of this world, it's just this is usually where you see the biggest difference in terms of gameplay, and then this translates into having better team fights. Not necessarily better map movements, not necessarily better team compositions, or like team composition understanding, but it's just like if you have better individual micro decisions, and if you have better micro, everything is just gonna be a lot smoother. You're building a house with better bricks, so the finished product is gonna look cleaner. That doesn't mean they have a better architect, they just means they have better tools. And just to show, you know, like Bin 369 Keens, like all these players are cracked out of their minds in micro, right? But with all this in mind, that would mean, oh, EU is just doomed. They're just better. No, not necessarily, because there's one thing in this triangle that I didn't really consider, or I haven't talked about yet, which is this outside circle or box, is drafting, meta understanding, and champion strength. Just because you have better micro, you have better individual macro decisions, does not mean you have better understanding of drafting, of what's strong and the relative champion strengths, and how to win the game. That just means whatever champs you have, whatever champs you end up picking, you're gonna be good on them, you're gonna understand them well, and you're gonna play them well. That doesn't actually mean that objectively you're smarter or you're making the better decisions. Once you get into the game, these players are insane. So what does this mean for EU? Just to bring it back a little bit, I think at least this is one of the key things we can look to differentiate ourselves in the future to get an advantage. And I'm gonna show examples in just a bit, just to support this hypothesis. Before that, I want to show this, which is a game from LCK playoffs. It's a lower bracket, KT versus Harmer Live, game 1. This game had very little to do with like, oh, the micro or the individual micro decisions. It had a lot to do with drafting. You have a Zerath and a Sari against Saya, Azir, and even Poppy Renningson have very little to no engage, and Leona can't carry it all by herself. So you're getting outranged, you don't have engage, and yeah, well, what can you do then? Like, there's not much to it. You just slowly lose the game, you can't force any fights, and you're just sitting there waiting for enemies to kill you or poke you out. And this was like a clean game from KT. Obviously, you say maybe KT were the better team anyway, whatever it might be, but if you look pound for pound in each role, it's not like their Keen has played better this year, I know, but like Kingin is not in any way bad. Like Viper is probably better than aiming, like just pound for pound individual micro decision. Like this guy is cracked, but there's more to the game than just like how insane are you at those things. It's these maybe higher concepts, team-wide macro and drafting, meta understanding, all these things that for sure plays in KT's favor here. Before going any further, a little quick shout out to Yamatocannon, or some of the things he said on stream that I agree with and I think we should look to understand and should help EU evolve our understanding of how to improve. First thing here, which is a paraphrasing, I couldn't find the actual quote from Yamato, but it's EU Lucian Nami, they copied the picks and not the setup and playstyle. Which, if we go back to this, they copied the drafting and the meta, but they didn't actually copy this over here. Obviously, to some extent we did, but we didn't go deeper. Maybe we looked at the macro, oh, they're dashing into lane, but like, did they look at their ward usage, their ward timings, their jungle pathing, all these like things that had nothing to do with micro, but these decisions you're making in the game as individuals and as a team in order to set up the Lucian army. And then the other thing, this is from Voice of Yamato, shout out, a great podcast. In order to beat the odds, you need to find ways to become an outlier. You can't just do the same thing as everyone else and expect better results. In order to be number one, in order to be the best, you need to do some things differently. If it's your practice method, if it's your ritual on the day, if it's your draft meetings, if it's your champion pool, whatever it is, something has to be different from everyone else in order for you to succeed. And the same, I think, goes for almost anything. So, where does this take us? This takes us to this. Getting second doesn't make you closer to first. And I'm just gonna play the clip. This is about World of Warcraft. It's about the race to world first in World of Warcraft. But I think it's still relevant to League, and I think it's a very interesting topic. First things method is a guild in the race to world first, among others. And he's talking about after the race finished, you know, the results and method. They came in second, Echo they won, and Liquid, he's playing for Team Liquid, they came in fifth this race, just for a bit of context.
Now, as far as Method wanting to like become a serious contender for World First, which is basically what everyone in chat wants, right? Like, you guys want there to be like 3-4 guilds that could all realistically win, right? Like, at some point in the race, they are the front runners, they are doing it. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Method took a pretty big step in that. The one thing that guild would have to learn and really get the experience doing before they're probably at that point, assuming they'll probably get a lot of good recruits from this, is they have to, and like this is like the next big step. This is the actual functional thing that has to change, is you can't be a guild that really efficiently looks at strats for Rygolon and Jailer, copies them, does really well, and then progresses fast. That's important. That's player skill, that's identifying things that work and don't work, that's applying systems. But at some point, to like beat like what Echo was this raid on Jailer, you would have to push past them, figure out your own strat, and still outpace them. That's the thing your guild has to learn. And Method and Pieces and other guilds like that, they haven't actually been in a position to do that, which is what you need to do to like consistently be able to compete.
Yeah, so just to recap it a little bit here, is like, it's important skill to be able to copy or to be able to take ideas from other teams, other whatever it might be, and using them as your own, adapting them maybe to your, you know, play style, players, whatever it might be, the way you have your team set up. But at some point you need to learn and you need to start thinking for yourself. JDG probably, I obviously have no idea what they're actually talking about in their team meetings, but they might take inspiration from other teams, what maybe BLG and LNG and some of the other top Chinese teams, or maybe Gen G are doing. But at the end of the day, the conclusions they come to in their meetings, in their draft meetings, in their idea of how to play the game is probably not derived from anyone else but how they see the game. And that's what's, you know, keeps pushing them forward and keeps improving their level as a team. It's not, you know, oh, how are these other teams doing, let's try and copy that. Even though that skill is important, you need both, and you especially need the ability to understand the game on your own and as a team, and push that forward if you want to be the best and not just forever chasing the best team at the time. And just to show from this specific example, this was the race right after this race. He talked about, even though Method came in second, they came in 3 days after Echo, and obviously fair and square, they made it to second, but they weren't actually close to overtaking Echo. And the race after, Liquid wins, you know. Liquid tried their own strat, tried to push it their own way. They end up losing, but that doesn't mean that the next time there's a new race, starting from the start, they win, because they reiterated on it, they tried to improve it, and they changed some things around, and then suddenly they had a chance to actually win, or like they ended up winning. Now I want to show some of the things, because with this being said, it's like, oh, you don't use LPL or LCK Vods for anything. That's not true. You still need to be able to do this, and you still need to be able to learn from LPL and LCK and how they play the game. It's maybe in a slightly different way to what is currently being done, or maybe not, but it's just what I really want us to consider in EU to do better. In this case, it's at MSI this year, and they're diving, right? And you see how they dive. Okay, they walk up close. Elk uses his E already, but he's just waiting. Lulu takes the aggro when Diego's close, and they can full combo and they can one shot, right? And then they reset the turret aggro, they wait, and then they dive again. They end up messing it up a little bit here, but concept is the same. Late flash from Soon in this case, and On ends up dying because he takes aggro as soon as Elk gets CC'd, but still, it was very cleanly played, it was very nicely played. And this you can still take inspiration from how they play things, how they do things. Okay, they're able to dive bot level 3. Okay, that means in this matchup we need to maybe path bot with our jungler, or maybe we need to look at how they played the early laning phase, try to counter that in some way. Maybe we need an early ward on bot side, or mid prior, or a TP ready, or whatever it might be. You can still learn how they set up things, how they do things, but you don't have to just blindly copy Diego, Sari, Lulu to do this. It's like maybe it's just because they have this practiced a lot and they can do this in a lot of matchups. Has nothing to do with the champs. Maybe it's just like this is what they're good at doing, so we need to find a way to counter it. There are many ways to consider and learn from this, other than just like, okay, these champs must be broken, like maybe EU did to some extent with the Lucian army. Now I'm going to use this idea of practicing for first and not for second, and look at some of the old replays from 2019 G2. And obviously there are many reasons why 2019 G2 was a good team, and the meta and everything was able to be flexed, and you can see Akali and Silas and Gragas and all these flexible champions being picked very often. There was the funnel meta, there was the Sona Lux stuff, Sona Tarek stuff, all these things. Obviously the pool of champions was enormous, but even so, I want to show, as you can see here on the screen, Syndra bot lane was played twice by G2 the whole year. It was not played more than twice, and it was played in Game 5 of MSI semifinals and Game 5 of the summer finals against Fnatic. So it's not, and it wasn't being played by anyone else. It wasn't being played by other teams. It wasn't meta or something the best or whatever. It was something I think G2 believed that this is good. We know how to play with it. We know what to do with it. We think it's strong. It has these certain matchups it can probably be played in, and it's viable in these situations. We need 80 from topside, whatever it might be. This is how you draft it, and whenever it needed to be brought out, they brought it out because they think it was strong. And I think this is a symptom, or you can see that they're playing for first. They understand more than just copying blindly, which the West again has done. There are also examples of them not doing, of us not doing it. I'm just saying this is required in order to be the best team. More stats from 2019. This is the Pyke top from the whole year. Was played by Wunder twice. He was the first one to play it twice at MSI against SKT in the group stage, and as you can see here in Game 5. And then afterwards it was played by other players, Mike Kinkin, Gimgoon, Summit, but these weren't at the highest level at the time, or like at the international competitions. And it was also after Wunder did it. And then if you look at FPX, for example, this is all Nautilus mid the whole year of 2019. It was pretty much only Doomby playing it. It was with their style of play, how they understood the game, push mid, roam, dive sides early, with Ryze, with Nautilus, and they found champions that could do that, because they thought this is the best way to play the game, and this is what's strong right now. Doesn't mean they can't take inspiration from other teams, just means they still have their own way of looking at the game, and they still are pushing the envelope forward of what they think is possible. With this being said, now we look at 2023 G2, and they have shown examples of this as well. For example, with the Lissandro supporting Rakan, or with the Sejuani mid. I didn't find the games, but they played it twice. This is exactly what you want to see, I think, from EU, especially going into international tournaments. You don't want to just blindly copy whatever is being played. You want our own take, our own spin on what is viable, what is the meta, and how we can create an advantage from the start of the game that will allow us to play our style, how we think the game should be played, in order to be an outlier in some sense, because we probably aren't going to be outliers in the micro and the macro department. Alright, and now I want to compare LPL and LEC finals or season finals with each other and look at some of the mistakes happening in LEC and some of the things happening in LPL and how they're playing certain situations out. And I want to really focus on a couple of key things. So one is mistakes you are making that we don't notice because we are either not playing at a high enough level, like individually, to where those mistakes get punished, and that changes our view on the game. So certain fights would go differently if certain players would change how they played it, and it actually was a bad idea to do it in the first place. Like, let's say you engage and you win the fight, but actually it's bad because enemies could have just played it differently and would have won it. Or it can be mistakes where we are doing it, like in the EU in this case, EU is doing certain things that the East aren't doing. So you could be like overextending for tempo or reading for waves or whatever it is, and you see LPL teams in those same scenarios not doing so and not getting punished. So they're actually demonstrating just a higher level of understanding of the game. And other than that, the last thing, which is a huge thing I think, is this middle layer of the pyramid of individual macro decisions. Do we understand our own role and our team identity well enough to make good individual macro decisions at a high level and not make mistakes in this regard to set up our team for success? Or are we gonna make a bunch of mistakes? Yo, okay, post-recording DV here. I just wanted to clear up some of the things I said in the video when I recorded it that wasn't as clear as I liked it to be. So before going into the VOD review, these are like the 3 mistakes I'm seeing EU make very often that, you know, the LPL they don't make, or where you can demonstrably see we're doing it worse. So first is fake data from playing against a lower level of competition. If certain players are playing situations better, you wouldn't go for them in the first place. This you're gonna see later on with like a broken blade all in the final, among other things, where you just can see if X player played it better, Y player would just be inting, but you get away with it and you get like fake data from that. Second is playing similar situations objectively worse. This is gonna be a clip of Noah and Ruler being in a very similar situation in bot lane where their support is not with them and they just need to wait in order to catch a wave. Noah gets dove, Ruler doesn't. It's like very clear cut, almost very similar. Not exactly, but it's very similar. There's not much to say other than we're just playing worse League of Legends. They have a better understanding of the whole game and they're better at looking at the map and understanding their role. And then the third, which is this overarching, like most mistakes like this happen all the time, is worse individual macro decisions. This is what I talked about earlier, right? Positioning, base timings, summoner usage, wave management, all these I wrote down here. You know, I wrote some of them up here as well. It's just objectively worse. But back to the video and back to the VOD. So the first clip here, and I want to show this. This is actually what inspired me to make the video in the first place. See, XL game 5, they're quite a bit ahead, 1.5k or so, and they just pushed out top. Tristana is pushing out bot. First of all, already here I think they're making mistakes. This is not what I'm going to be talking about most about, but I think Abadage should still push top. You have Odo hovering to mid, so right now you're just going 5 mid, getting the wave, but you don't have any side to walk into, and Humanoid gets to push bot for free. So now Abadage is going to be late to pushing out top, and Odo is going to run bot and catch the wave. Now Oscar obviously doesn't have to run top instantly because the wave is not pushed out the same way it was the other side. So what does that mean? Well, that means Fnatic can be 5 mid. They are not showing on top, and they're not going to be showing on bot for a long time. You even see Tristana here. But what do they decide to do? That's the question. But with Excel, with this information, they know no one is top, they know no one is bot. What are they going to do? Are they going to fight on mid? I guess they are. So they're going to give Fnatic a 5v4. Abe wasn't really here. They're TPing in late. Just a completely grief fight when they can just wait for top wave, wait for it to be pushed out, wait for Oscar or Oren to show, and then keep playing the game and they'd be very happy. Instead they decide right now we need to fight, they die, and Fnatic end up getting Nash and winning this game, right? And it's off the back of a very simple minor mistake from Excel that is very simple, not that deep, and just surprising. Let's keep going. So This is from the finals. This is the first game. I would call this a individual macro or like micro decision, which is no one not popping Ghost here, and I'm gonna show why it has an impact. If he just pops Ghost, he's fast. He's gonna be fast as fuck. Now he flash combos here. You could say Hans could maybe flash this and then everything's good, but if he doesn't, here Noah is too far. He ends up Q autoing, but it barely reaches before he can flash away. If he's Ghost all this time, he's gonna be closer and he's gonna kill him, and this whole play is gonna be different. He's guaranteed gonna be dead to this Q. He ends up flashing late as well instead of flashing immediately to try and kill him, and the whole thing turns into a disaster. G2 played it fine. It's just like it had nothing to do with G2 this scenario. Like Hans is dead guaranteed if Fnatic played well, and that's like kind of weird to say, but like it really didn't have anything to do with G2 coming out ahead in this scenario. Now I'm gonna look later this game. They go for a top dive that ends in a complete disaster. They're obviously against Fed Renington. They know he doesn't have ult probably, so they want to dive him, fast dive him, before he can get back to his turret and just clear the wave. But first of all, if you look at the map, it's not like they had hardcore mid prior. Syndra is not catching wave under her turret. Broken Blade is bot lane and is fine to farm. It's not like they're threatening to dive either. So they could maybe wait one turn, let Broken Blade push bot, catch one mid, shift into top and do it cleaner. They end up going for this, and it's at worst it's a miss, or at best it's a miscalculation of we thought we could dive him, but at worst it's like a lack of understanding and tracking of all the important things you need to track in order to go for a dive, like mid prio, damage checks, TP timings, tempo tracking, like when is Trimpy gonna be here, when is Razok gonna be here, and they end up losing a lot. They end up losing Mickey Flash, they end up losing 2 for 0. It's just a huge mistake that would, against another team, probably lose you the game. Now, I guess, this is what I just showed, right? This all in from Broken Blade. So first of all, he goes for this all in. Noah flashes the Q, that's well played. Now what does Noah do? He switches guns for no reason, so he loses a lot of DPS there with barely any gain, and then he stands still here. Instead of walking closer to him and increasing his DPS, like all this time he could, not switch gun and walk close to him, and he wins this 1v1. For sure he wins this 1v1. Broken Blade was like one auto from dying. And the reason why this is bad is not, I'm going for an all-in, it's like, I miscalculated slightly. It's like, all the way here, Broken Blade thinks, okay, I'm gonna kill him, I'm gonna go for an all-in, push him over the wall and win it. But in reality he actually doesn't win it, so he just killed himself. Against a better Aphelios, he just killed himself for no reason. And this is why sometimes against the East, games like this look so wacky, because you just die. Like you is just like, how did you just die to that? It's like, well, it's actually because you practice against players that aren't as good, so you end up thinking that you are able to do things you aren't actually able to do with the limits of each champion, and that's how we have so much catching up to do. Every time we go international, people always say like, I had to relearn this matchup, I had to relearn this, I had to relearn this. Is because we're going for things that only work if you play against players not at the highest level. And this is what I would call, again, an individual, either macro or micro decision of Broken Blade, where it's just demonstrably a bad play. It's not much further than that. Now I want to show another play here of Teamfight at Drake, and you see lack of coordination from Fnatic. It's like there's no need for Trimpy to go here when there's no follow up. You can see Wonder is hitting the Drake, Razok is going for the Drake too, and we're engaging at the same time. Like either you're ready, like it's just uncoordinated to some extent, and that's why I think this ends up bad. Razok is still trying to finish the Drake, and we're taking a huge fucking fight. It's just, it's not pretty. Like Trimpy here could stay in the bush, Q him. Whenever face checks, Q him, knock him away, or whatever it might be, but it's just, you can see we aren't at the level, or we aren't at least at the highest possible level. Another team fight from Fnatic, this is later, but it's the same concept. See, 3 people on Drake, Trimpy's starting a fight or walking aggro, instead of playing patiently, waiting, seeing, letting them face check him. He's getting caught at the start of the fight. it ends up being a bad fight for Fnatic, even though the setup should have been good. They were ahead. They're gonna guaranteed gonna win this. It ends up being a disaster. Next up, from that same game, later in that game, the Drake after. You see setup from G2. They get the Drake. They get Yone on top of Trimby. I think they end up killing him here as well. Yeah. And in the meantime, you see here at the bottom side of your screen, Ansama is getting zoned off and then ends up trying to help instead of, you know, just walking away, playing for himself and making sure he's staying safe rather than dying. And because he dies, Mickey dies as well, which, you know, happens, but it would have been support for support. Hans walking this way around, defending Nash. Instead it's losing the Nash, them going for some sort of flip because they kinda have to, and game is really lost. Not off the back of like anything crazy, just like, wait, why did Hans path like that? Why did he think he could walk into the enemy fed Kaiser? Just to compare it to MSI, this is like the level of play you play against, competition. Obviously Hans doesn't think here he can get comboed on, and this is a crazy sequence from BLG. Insta flash charm, perfect follow up from both Shun and Elk. Insta go in, force the stopwatch. Elk cleanses out and runs away. And then they just win the game off this, right? This is, again, this is why we have so much catching up to do every time we go internationally. You see the mistakes happen in EU. You see how internationally we would get punished by this. We go internationally, we get punished by it. We go back to EU and we don't actually demonstrably or improve enough to the point where we can change our habits. Again, now this is maybe at a bit high level, but you look at these comps. Fnatic comp in general outscales. They have insane disengaged team comp. Enemies have very little to no engage, or like they have engaged, but not enough to actually reach both Taliyah and Xayah in this case. But what G2 do have, they have mid prior early, they have bot prior early, they have a jungler, a dog jungler that can look to pressure bot early and damage that matchup as much as possible. If Draven gets ahead, nothing matters, and the whole game is just going to be around Draven or Syndra, whoever gets ahead. They go for a ward early, so because they want to dive probably wave 3 on bot. They have real good thinking, very smart. They see them, but instead of getting the ward running the fuck away, Ansama overgreets. It's fine, it's a small mistake, happens. But what this means is, like, you go too far, you get punished, that's fine. But this should be game losing, because if you look at what happens next, they get the control of the wave. They don't actually end up crashing it, but it ends up bouncing here. Now, wave is hardcore pushing into them. Obviously it's hard to see because I don't have the pro view, but the wave is hardcore bouncing into them. There's no need to step up. You have no flash on Xayah. Just vibe. You just need to vibe. And then you end up getting ganked here. Yike flashes over the wall. Very good pathing. Creative or whatever you want to say. But this is, in reality, at this point, it should be out of their hands. It shouldn't. Like, Fnatic shouldn't step up. There's no need to step up. They have a slow stack coming into them. They're 3 bot side. They're ready to defend the dive. And they die before. It's like, is G2 really gonna be good at it? Or like, are they gonna be able to compete internationally? Because I don't think the top teams in the other regions are gonna fall for this. They are not gonna get a kill early on their Xayah in a team comp where it only matters if Xayah falls behind or not, and then just throw it away. It's just not gonna happen. Now, looking at this is another individual, what I would call macro decision from Hans and Broken Blade as well. I'm going to show both examples here. Very good situation. Ends up getting Noah's flash. Noah has no flash now. He flashes in, he dies. That's unfortunate. But if you look at this right here, Noah's wave is fucked. He has no flash. Noah's bot side, Leona's bot side. He's completely fucked. He goes from being completely fucked to him dying, losing the whole bot wave, and Noah getting a good reset. It's like a complete disaster. Let's look at this. Same thing happens top. Broken Blade takes an all in, gets his ult, get Renekton ult, and gets Renekton flash. So Renekton is going to be completely useless next 2 minutes. And he's just playing Cassandra vibing. Such a good position, can push the wave, just run away. Instead, goes for a flash Q, ends up being dodged and dies. Kinda unnecessarily, I would say. And ends up getting punished hardcore for it. And I think, again, internationally you would get even more fucked by doing this. It's hard to find situations where people don't flash in, but this is from the final, game 5. You see Ruler here, does in fact not flash in to try and kill Gala. They get his flash, Knight tries to flash in, obviously. It's different, it's obviously depends on your role, depends on a lot of things, but as an AD carry specifically, like your flash is insanely valuable. So I think rule it like, well, if I don't flash in, we can take the Herald, we can reset him, we can play the Drake, and I'm gonna have my flash, and I'm gonna have it for Railroad, flash Railroad, and they're not gonna have 6 flash for the Drake, so we're gonna get this Drake guaranteed. I genuinely think that's what he's thinking, and I think there's a correct way of seeing this situation. That kill is not gonna change anything meaningfully. Your flash for the next Drake fight is, I think they end up dropping the Drake here, but they end up trading for top and keep scaling. Go. Next situation, just to reiterate, if he dies or he flashes in and he dies, it's gonna be a complete disaster. They're gonna lose so much. But next play here, forces Rail flash. Obviously there's not gonna flash into 3 people. Kastante flashes over the wall. He's alone, he knows he's alone. Ruler doesn't flash after him. He's gonna again keep the flash. Not gonna flash after him. And I think you just see this level of discipline way more in the East about which role. Again, it depends on which champ you're playing. If you're playing AD carry, most of the time your flash is very valuable. If you're playing support and you can trade flashes or you can look for a play, sometimes obviously that's worth it, and that's what the East goes for. Switching gears a little bit here, back to EU. This is Trimby engaging onto Hylissang here. I guess we watch the clip first and then I want to talk about it, because I think again this is one of those mistakes I talked about earlier, where it's like it only works because you're playing against players that aren't at the very highest level, or will punish you for even the smallest mistake. Because here I think if Hylissang flashes this, if he flashes this, Q's Trimby is fucked. Trimby, even if he has flash, he has no hook, he's not gonna have hook for a long time, he's not gonna hit anything with it, and there's gonna be a Sejuani, Braum, Varus that's gonna win this. They're gonna destroy this 3v3, right? You see him even almost dying at the end here, even though he hit the hook. And Hylissang didn't even ignite. Like, if Hylissang ignites him, he's also dead, right? So again, it's like one of those things where you create bad habits, you just end up making bad decisions, and then once you go internationally, you realize, oh shit, I have so much to relearn, I have so much to change about my gameplay. Moving on. Again, look at the team comps real quick. Very poke heavy, Varus, Jace, Rumble, playing slow, poking people out. Again, it's similar to the game I just showed of KT and Hammer Life. A CSI against full poke, even a Talia in this case, with very little engage, only Nautilus Cyan. So just keep playing poke. They're obviously 2 Drakes down, they just got the Infernal as well. But other than that, look, they cannot play. They're just getting slowly poked out. But somehow Mad Lions is gonna manage to lose this game. They slow chase, this is very good. Niski decides now it's time to jump in, instead of playing it slow, playing to his comp, and slow chasing them all the way. And this is obviously a small mistake, or like it's like, in essence it's a small mistake, it's easy to fix, it's like, oh, just don't jump in, but it is a symptom of like this lack of understanding of the greater game, or the greater understanding of team comps, team dynamics, and in this case they get punished for it. He dies, they lose a lot of gold, he was quite fed, he had a shutdown I'm pretty sure, and then Hylissang ends up dying as well. They lose tempo on the map. Instead of completely destroying Fnatic's tempo, they lose tempo on the map because they both die. They open up on top side, they play for top tier 2, they end up getting it here. Elyoya makes a mistake, dies, and they lose Nash for like, what just happened, like in the span of 2 minutes they went from being chasing the enemies out of Drake pit to completely not able to play the game into getting the Nash. And obviously this is well played to Fnatic as well, but like in reality it had nothing to do with them. Moving on. Again, I wanna talk about this individual macro decisions. Karthus, he's gonna farm up, he's gonna try to farm as much as he can. No fighting, he just wants to get as many camps as possible here. Enemies have a Kalista, Alistar. Early game, you don't want to fight them in bot side, you have an Israel. So, why are we contesting bot scuttle? No one really knows. It ends up being a disaster. and if we speed it up a bit, I end up dying 2 people here. I think yeah, he flashes out, humanoid flashes out, they get out, and they die 2 people for almost no reason, just because we wanted to fight the scuttle instead of just waiting for your blue to spawn, take your broom, reset, do the same thing again, full clear, full clear, full clear. That's what Karthus wants to do. Individual macro decision and understanding of your whole team comp. You have like a poke, slow, scaling team comp. Playing fight slow, you know, poking, Ezreal, Jace, and then Karthus ults, and then people can't play the objective. You take the objective for free later on, and game is GG. Now, looking at Bad Lions, it's like they get a chunk on Trimpy. This is very good, but their team is making a play top side, which means at best they can make a fast play on bot side, but they decide, okay, they hard force, they go too far, they get, you know, double flashes, which is good, but again, it's like they're getting baited into playing a fight when Humanoid is walking bot side, and they die, both of them. Like they throw their lead, you know, they were really far ahead, they were in really good position, they go too far, they die. And at the same time, Razork, again, knowing his mid laner's mid, they're not winning top side, he's playing Karthus, he needs his camps, he's just farming. Look at how far ahead he is. Just give the Herald or whatever you're farming, ends up contesting, ends up dying for no reason. So 2 times, or like 2 mistakes in the same like 30 seconds of like fighting on weak side, overforcing on weak side, and for some reason, again, wanting to fight with Karthus, him being 0-2. Now we speed up the game a bit. You see here, 16 minutes. Fnatic, they end up using their Karthus ult here. Get his first strike gold. Getting 72 gold, nice. And get the Herald. Good job. They end up being late on tempo now. They don't have Karthus ult and they're gonna be late on tempo for the Drake. So you could do many things here. You can open top side, you can just give the Drake, you can open mid, you can put the Herald mid and just run it down mid and be like, okay, we lost Drake, we don't have tempo for it, we're later on the map, but we're gonna, you know, get some gold on our carries and we're gonna outscale them completely, and on the next Drake we don't care. What happens instead? They try to fight. They end up getting Kalista and Alistar and Maokai. They still, again, can walk back mid. They want to play fight slow. They want to just play to poke. They don't have a Karthus right now. And we flash engage. It's like, this is the only way you lose a fight. Is by diverging from the way you want to play the game or your team comp wants to play the game. And, you know, obviously Fnatic here overchased. They could have just backed out here 1-for-1. Still not a good situation, but end up overchasing and end up dying. But concept still applies. It's like, why are we doing this? Like, we're not playing in accordance to our team comp and not the way we want to draft. Like, well, it's not a hard engage champ in this game. It's just a vibe. If enemies try to engage, you counter engage and you just like play the fights as slow as possible. And boom. Now, next play, they get a pick on Niski on top. Very nicely done. What do? They decide, okay, now it's time to start Nash. But why? Like they have they have a poke team comp. It's 20 minutes. They can just wait for next Drake. They can fight the next Drake. No one really knows. This is where Kasi ends up getting a pentakill. They lose the Nash. What happens at next Drake? The Drake after is an extremely chaotic fight, but they're 8k gold behind, and Fnatic end up barely losing. But they're 8k gold behind for no reason, through their own gameplay, like for no reason. No one forced them to do this. No one was like, oh, you have to play like this or whatever it might be. Like, you're just 8k gold behind in 5 minutes because you decided now it's time to engage, now it's time to fight. Force for no reason when we're scaling comp. This another example of like, you just see the individual like decisions from, in this case, Noah. You see his jungler mid, his support mid. His mid laner is TPing back, he has static, he gets dove here. Ends up getting dove. Unfortunate, whatever. It's not even unfortunate, it's just like disrespect, not respecting his timer, his jungler, his mid laner mid. Let's look at Ruler. Similar situation. His support is mid, obviously in this case he sees enemy support. And he walks back to lane and he's respecting. He's waiting. Even though he's losing, or not losing, but he's not at a big wave. Like, obviously he didn't actually lose anything here, so it's fine for him to do it, especially fine. But I'm just pointing it out as like a difference in how the best Eastern AD carries play in this case, and the best Western, or like the top Western. Next play, Noah again, right? Like, not something deep, it's not something, but stuff like this just does not happen in the East. It's the same way it happens in the West, like random picks like this. 24 kills at 19 minutes. Just to show a few more things, right? Again, look at the team comp. Okay, you have Nico, Renekton, Sejuani, Alistar. Pretty hard engage. Enemies have like poke / disengage, real good disengage, good poke, 6 Jays and Lilia, right? But okay, what do you see? Like, they finished the Drake. Fnatic, if you compare this to how Fnatic played it, he would go right now. Like, he has just a good, like, he has just as a good ult now as he has after they kill the Drake. But like, he doesn't go too fast because he knows, okay, we need to get the Drake first, then we can fight. Alright, now I engage. My team is ready. They follow up. We kill the 6. Insta dead. Nicely done, right? But you just know that this can, like, at least this level of play and this level of coordination, and what I would say, obviously this is like the highest tier, maybe like the team coordination, but it's also Knight being good at the game. It's also Knight understanding individual, like, macro decisions. This is why I call it macro, because it has impact on more than just his own champ or his own game. It is like game defining. And this patience is not, it's hard to find in EU. And in this case, right, Ruler is not doing anything exceptional. He's just hitting the first target, but that's also his job, you know. But they're coordinating it at the same time. They're not going one by one or splitting up the fight or trying to finish the Drake while Knight is engaging. The last thing I want to show is this, which is again similar, but Cassie's, oh, here he gets off to an awkward position. That's fine. He can maybe take this, go back. He can go back, join his team, take the plant, maybe walk around. But he stays here. It's like, it's not his micro, it's like his understanding of the game, or like macro understanding of the game, or again, individual macro decision, and they lose the game. And obviously it's not only Cassie's fault, there's more to it, but it's part of it. It's like Trimpy gets disengaged, not because this is how the fight is supposed to start, but because this is how Cassie decides to play the fight. Going back to the last thing now, this video is going to be quite a long one, so if anyone's still watching, shout out. Okay, conclusion, EU at Worlds 2023. What I personally want to see, and what I think should be the short term, like just this Worlds, what are we going to do? Don't change our drafting style just because we get stomped by the Eastern teams. Because I think it's most likely going to be due to their better micro. They're going to play Renekton or whatever it might be, and they just stomp in the first 15 minutes. It's like, oh, in order to play, we need to pick the Renekton ourselves. But just because you're 100 CS to 100 CS at 10 minutes, or let's say 150 to 150 at 50 minutes, doesn't make you closer to actually winning the game. It's the same concept as before. Just because you're closer to the first place in terms of standings, doesn't mean you're actually any closer to overtaking. You're still gonna lose. It's just you're gonna lose later in the game because you decided to draft Renekton early game potentially, and if it doesn't fit your style, if it doesn't fit how you want to play the game, then it's not gonna work anyway. So you might as well stick to what you know, stick to what you want to play. And it's not saying I don't want to see Renekton. Like, for example, Fnatic played it, and if that's how they want to play the game, they should keep playing the game that way. But if they want to play a game a different way, they shouldn't change your way on the game. We shouldn't stop playing Lissandra support, because that's one of the ways where we could maybe potentially find an actual advantage in the draft that would somehow force the Eastern teams to shift things around, right? This idea of being an outlier. And then the second part, which again kind of goes into the first one, figure out how they want to play, stick to it, and try to become the masters of it. If you want to play Ornn, it's possible. The JDG, they play a lot of Ornn, they play a lot of Sand, they play a lot of K'Sante. You don't have to play Jax, you don't have to play these champs. If you want to play those champs, Jax, Fiora, Gwen, whatever it might be, you can also do that. It's just figure out this is the style we want to play. If it's bot lane we want to play, the Aphelios we want to play, the Seri, whatever you want to do, stick to it, get good at it, and get the best possible way you can be with that style, because that's gonna make you closer to winning these games than just trying to imitate whatever the East is gonna do, because they're gonna have better micro, they're gonna have better ideas how to play the game, and they're gonna be able to execute it better. And then things I want to see for the future, for like 2024 and beyond, is stop importing the meta. We need to find ways to become an outlier in terms of draft, in terms of meta understanding and the higher tiers of the game understanding, because we're not going to become it in micro or in individual macro decisions. It's just not plausible with how good the East is right now relative to the West. And then this practice, the idea of practicing for first, not for second. Stop using, okay, well JDG is doing it, then we should probably do it too, or whatever it might be. JDG are probably sitting down, having a meeting, and they think about, oh, BLG brought this out, maybe we should think about that, or like. But at the end of the day, the conclusions they come to is most likely going to be based on what they think is good. They're going to be like, actually, I think Sejuani is good in this case because we can do these things and we're able to play the game map like this. And that's how they keep improving, that's how they keep pushing the envelope. Not by imitating others, but obviously by taking inspiration, seeing what others are doing, and then bouncing off that or improving upon it. But not just blindly copying, because I don't think that will get us anywhere closer to actually becoming the best. It will just make us look closer because we will get a higher place or a higher seeding. The core issue at the end of the day is it's better in the short term to try and copy these teams because they obviously have something that works and they're good at, and you're gonna have a playbook that you can follow. But at the end of the day, it won't ever make you beat these teams because you're just gonna keep following the wheel of them. As far as they go, that's how far you will go. You will never drive for yourself. You will never climb for yourself. That's it. Thank you for watching. If you made it through it, and see you guys in the next one.